November 14, 2007, public hearing of the Board of Architectural Review. We appreciate all of you who are here tonight. The board was established by zoning ordinance in 1958. Our first historic district was Gratz Park. We now have a total of 14 historic districts. The board, which is appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the Urban County Council, is part of the Division of Historic Preservation. I'm Clyde Carpenter. I'm currently the chair of the Board of Architectural Review, and we have all of our other members of the board with us tonight, and I'd like to ask them to introduce themselves, beginning over here on my right.
Terry Hanley.
Jack Ballard.
Derek Wingfield.
Jim Dickinson.
The Historic Preservation Office, of which we are part, maintains a full-time staff to assist you with your projects. The board encourages and recommends that applicants use the Office of Historic Preservation as a resource. The Historic Preservation Office is located at 101 East Vine Street, room 220. It is our procedure to consider applications in the order in which they are listed on our agenda. In each case, we will have a presentation by the staff, and we'll hear any additional comments from the applicant. The board will then ask questions or make comments regarding the application, hear comments from any other interested parties who might be in the audience. The chair will then ask board members to enter a motion. If you are here tonight and you wish to speak to the board, please come up front to the podium and use the microphone. If you're planning to speak tonight, there's a sign-in sheet back in the corner of the building by the entrance, and we would like to ask you to put your name and other information on that so that that can be properly recorded. We have some items that have already received staff approvals before we begin our review of applications for certificates of appropriateness. There are certain items that the staff can approve, eliminating the necessity for all applicants to appear before the board. Tonight we have 23 staff approvals, and I would like to note that seems to be a characteristic of most of the meetings we've been having. There are a great many cases that are coming through the board and moving on at the staff approval level. And I want to compliment our staff for being expeditious in dealing with them. And so the cases that I read into the record in a few minutes tonight have already received staff approval. And there are 23 of them, as I said. In the South Ashland Central Avenue Historic District, 241 South Ashland Avenue, repair, re-landscape the front yard. There are several cases in Aylesford Historic District, 343 Aylesford, replace the roof, 216 Clay, install shutters, 220 Clay, install shutters, 9 Preston Court, re-roof the structure, replace the gutter, 160 Woodland Avenue, replace roof, reline box gutters, and 2 cases in Bell Court, 137 West Bell Court, replace a sidewalk, 521 East Main Street, repair, repoint retaining wall. In Mulberry Hill Historic District, 436 North Limestone Street, install cable access box. Several cases in the Northside Historic District, 628 North Broadway, replace wood on balconies, 611 North Broadway, repair porch, renovate structure, and install floor. 75 Hampton Court, install a VGT plaque. At 449 West 2nd Street, replace a roof. At 472 West 2nd Street, replace a roof. And at 489 West 3rd Street, renovate the structure. There are 2 cases in the Seven Parks Historic District. 554 Arcadia Park, remove the dead pin oak tree. 1701 Nicholasville Road, re-roof the structure. 3 cases in South Hill. 326 South Broadway, replace existing sign. 326 South Broadway, replace 7 deteriorated windows on the 3rd floor. And at 362 South Mill Street, renovate the structure. And then finally, 3 cases in the Western Suburb Historic District. 151 Old Georgetown Street, install a fence. 633 West Main Street, repair cornice, replace gutter and downspouts. And 716 West Short Street, re-roof the structure. So these applications have already been approved at the staff level, and these applicants already have their certificates of appropriateness. We will now proceed to consider the review of applications for certificates of appropriateness. We have a number of items on the agenda tonight in which the staff has recommended approval with one or two conditions. And we're going to sound the agenda. We're going to go down the agenda and see if these cases which have already obtained staff approval can be dealt with without having a full public hearing. If the applicants are present and they're agreeable with the findings of the staff, then we will not have a full public hearing. So the first item on the agenda is at 151 East 3rd Street. That's item number 1 on our agenda. That's in the Constitution Street Historic District. 151 East 3rd Street, install signage. Is that applicant present?
The applicant's not present, but has received their staff report and is agreeable with the findings.
Okay. The staff recommended approval as submitted. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make comments about this application? Okay. Any comments from the board? If not, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the COA for 151 East 3rd Street.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay. The second item on our agenda, item number 2, 366 South Mill Street, install paving. That's in the South Hill Historic District. Is that applicant present? Okay, would you like to come forward? If you'll be kind enough to give us your name.
Thomas P. Dupree
Okay. And you live at that property, I believe.
at 366 South Mill, yes.
The staff has recommended approval as submitted, and I assume you're in agreement with the recommendation.
I agree with the recommendation and the guideline.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make comments about this application? Okay. Hearing no comments, the chair will entertain a motion. The staff recommends approval as submitted.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of COA for 366 South Mill Street.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. All right. The third item on our agenda, item number 3, in the Woodward Heights Historic District, 828 West High Street, change porch roof material. Is that applicant present?
The applicant is not present, but has received a staff report and is agreeable with the findings.
Yeah, the staff has recommended approval with the final material choice to come back to the staff before issuing the certificate of appropriateness. Anyone in the audience care to make comments about this application? Okay. Hearing no comments, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval and issuance of the COA for 828 West High Street, subject to the single condition listed in the staff report.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. The next item on the agenda, item number 4, 219 Bell Place in Bell Court Historic District. The application is to change the design. Is that applicant present? Would you like to come forward? If you'll give us your name.
Sure, I'm Tracy Hawkins,
Okay. And what's your address?
221 Bell Place.
Okay. The staff has recommended approval as submitted with no conditions, and I assume that that's acceptable.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Thank you. That's what we like. That's what we like to hear. Okay.
I'm a team player. You know?
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. No, it's a very nice project. And,
Thank you.
anyone in the audience like to make comments about this application? Okay. Hearing no comments, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the COA for 219 Bell Place.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you so much. Okay. Item number 5 in the Woodward Heights Historic District, 316 Merino Street, install patio, change openings. Is that applicant present? Okay. Would you like to come forward? You're Mr. Brown.
Yes, sir.
Would you give us your name, please,
Nathan Brown,
and your address?
currently reside at 490 Monticello Boulevard.
Okay. The staff has recommended approval, but there are several conditions that are noted in the report. Have you had a chance to read
Yes,
the
I have.
report? Are you in agreement with the recommendations?
All except for the height of the privacy fence.
Well, we'll have to come back and hear that, but I can tell you that we don't approve fences higher than 6 feet typically. So, but if you want us to.
Okay, well, if that being the case, if you simply don't do it, then I'm fine with all the other recommendations.
Okay.
Save us
Yeah,
lots of
this has
time.
been our policy not to do that. And so, if you'll accept that condition, then we can proceed.
If I accept that condition, I wouldn't request, I would not build them with the, what's it called?
Swag.
This way.
Yeah, because obviously it wouldn't be a privacy fence if it,
Well, I think you could work with the staff
is
on
that something I can work out with staff level?
I think you can work that out with the staff, okay. It's just the idea of the fence being over that height. Sometimes it gets to be very visually dominant in the neighborhood, so that's where the staff is
We were
coming
trying to block off the property on the
And,
corner
you know,
as much
you
as
can work
possible.
with the staff, and if you do decide you want to come back and talk to us again about that, we'd be happy to do that.
No, that's fine.
Okay, very good.
Agreement.
Okay. All right. Anyone in the audience care to make comments about this application? Hearing no comments, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval and issuance of the COA for 367 Moreno Street, subject to the 4 conditions listed in the staff report.
Is there a second?
A second with the notation that during our conversation and findings that he may switch the swag design to a straight design, which will be subject to approval by the staff.
Okay. All right. Okay. Everyone understand the motion? Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. All right. The next item on the agenda is in Caden Town Historic District at 757 Caden Lane. The application is to demolish a garage and construct a garage. Is that applicant present?
The applicant is not present, but has heard of the findings.
Okay. The staff has recommended approval as submitted with a condition noted in our report that pertaining to final drawings and wall sections and details that need to be submitted prior to issuing the COA. Anyone in the audience care to make comments about this application? Okay. Hearing no comments, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the COA for 757 Caden Lane, subject to the single condition listed in the staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. The next item on the agenda is in Bell Court, 146 East Bell Court. And the application is to demolish a garage, construct a garage. Is the applicant present? Okay.
John Book, the applicant with Economy Home Improvement.
Okay. Have you had a chance to read the staff report?
Yes, we have.
Are you in agreement with the conditions?
We are fine with it, yeah.
Okay, very good, excellent. Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make comments about this application? Okay. Hearing no comments, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the COA for 146 East Bell Court, subject to the 3 conditions listed in the staff report.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
I'd like to put a record that I abstained from the vote on the
All right.
last case.
Okay, so the motion, there was 4 people in favor of the motion and 1 person who abstained. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is at 154 East Bell Court, and is that applicant present?
John Book, Economy Home Improvement.
Okay. You're representing the owners also?
Yes.
All right. Once again, have you had a chance to read the staff report?
Certainly have, and we're
Are
in
you
full agreement.
Agreement with that? Okay, very good. All right, thank you. Anyone in the audience wish to make comments about this application? Okay, hearing no comments, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the COA for 154 East Bell Court, subject to the 2 conditions listed in the staff report.
Okay.
Second.
Second, okay. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Okay, thank you. Okay, all right. The next item on the agenda is in Aylesford, 646 East High Street. That's to change the siding material in
William Turnbull, 646 East High Street.
The staff has recommended disapproval of your application. We can hear this case. I can tell you that it's not within our power or given the guidelines for us to grant the replacement of wood siding that appears to be in good condition.
I would like for you to hear the case.
Okay. All right. Then we'll come back to that. Okay. Okay. Our next item on our agenda is at the South Hill Historic District at 515 South Mill Street.
I have to recuse myself from this.
All right. Mr. Ballard is recusing himself. The application is to construct an addition. Is that applicant present? Guess not. Okay. The staff recommendation is approval as submitted with the condition that any changes that might come about after building inspection reviews the plans would have to come back. And I don't believe the applicant is here.
The applicant is not here, has read the staff report, and is agreeable with the findings.
Okay, great. Anyone in the audience care to make comments about this application? Okay. Hearing no comments, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval and issuance of the COA for 515 South Mill Street, subject to the single condition in the staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay. Mr. Ballard can return now. If someone would let him know. Okay. The next item on the agenda is number 11 on our agenda, 500 North Broadway. The application is to construct a carport, fencing, walls, and site work. Is that applicant present? Okay. Would you come forward? If you'll give us your name, please.
Michael Fugate with Land Design, Lexington, Kentucky.
Your address.
2140 Cave Hill Lane.
Right. The staff has recommended approval. However, there are some conditions, and I don't know if you had a chance to read the report.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Are you in agreement with the conditions?
I agree with all of them, right?
You agree with all of them?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. We can go ahead then and take action on this. Okay, thank you. Right. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make comments about this application? Okay. Hearing no comments, the chair will entertain a motion.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I move for approval and issuance of the COA for 500 North Broadway, subject to the 7 conditions listed in the staff report. Nice project, by the way.
Yeah, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Yeah, this really is a fantastic project, and
I have a comment, unfortunately, not unfortunately. There is a finding that or recommendation that the staff made with respect to final details of canopy. Come back to the staff, and I didn't see in the findings any notation regarding the canopy, or did I just miss it as to why they needed final details on the canopy?
This was from an earlier discussion we had at the conceptual review. There was a discussion about, is there more detail going to happen or something different happen with the canopy as far as material or on the roof and so forth. And so this was sort of a carryover from
I just
that.
wanted that reflected in our notes, or our minutes, if you will, that's why we're asking for more details on the canopy. Okay.
okay. Any more discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, fine. Thank you. Okay, we'll go back now and to it's application number 646 East High Street. The application is to change the siding material. This is in the Aylesford Historic District, so we'll have a staff presentation.
This is the property at 646 East High Street, and the applicant is requesting the board grant a COA to replace the existing deteriorated wood clapboard siding at the structure's left and right side with hardy plank siding having the same 4-inch reveal as the existing. He's attached a letter in which he has shown information about the history of painting of these two sides, and also a statement from Tom Radden, painter, about the condition of the wood and some cost estimates. The existing cornice, corner boards, and trim are to remain wood. We've listed the guidelines for your reference. The findings: staff has visited the site and found the wood clapboard siding in relatively good condition. There was no noticeable cupping of the boards, and any softness of the boards seemed to occur at the bottom edge of the peeling boards where the paint and/or caulking was still attached and holding moisture with some moss forming. The peeling appears to be that caused by excessive moisture which collects behind the paint film as described on page 9 of the preservation brief number 10 as published by the National Park Service, U.S. Department of the Interior, which we've attached to your packet. The brief goes on to state the first step of the treatment is to locate and remove the source of the moisture. The proposal to replace the existing wood clapboard siding of this historic structure with composite clapboard material is found inappropriate, not in accordance with guidelines. Guidelines 20-3 and 30-1 respectfully state replacement doors, windows, shutters, awnings, canopies, storefronts, foundations, roof features, gutters, downspouts, porches, steps, terrace, architectural details, and materials should be appropriate to the building on which they are located, and significant exterior materials should be retained. Likewise, the staff is recommending disapproval as submitted, and the applicant is here.
Mr. Turnbull. If you'd like to make any comments about this.
I beg your pardon? Yes, I would.
Okay. Here's your chance. Okay.
That's why I came.
Okay.
A lot of people have theories about why we have so much paint failure in our historic districts. I don't really know why I have paint failure. I just know I do and have had and have been struggling with it for years. Last Sunday, I went around my neighborhood. I didn't have to go very far, just around my block. Every house on my block that doesn't have vinyl siding on it has paint failure of some sort of another. It's easy to say you have a moisture problem and fix it before you paint, but it's much more difficult to figure out what the moisture problem is and exactly how to fix it. My theory is that when these houses were constructed in the early 1900s, they were heated by coal fireplaces. The wall construction had no insulation. Inside we had wood clapboard wood lath with plaster. On the outside we had sheathing, tar paper, and the wood siding. In the 40s and 30s, we started putting furnaces in these houses, and people would come back and they would drop cellulose insulation in these blank wall cavities. Then starting in the 50s and 60s, we started air conditioning these structures. My theory is, if you look at how this type of construction is done today, we put the vapor barrier inside rather than outside. We insulate the wall cavities heavily. We put sheathing on the outside just like we used to do. We put Tyvek, or a breathable barrier, on the outside, and then we put our sheathing on that. If we look at the standards for applying wood sheathing to houses, it says that we treat all 6 sides, front, back, top, bottom, and the ends. So we get down to, my opinion is that we need to find some solution to this problem that's economically reasonable, justifiable, and that's why I'm here. I've seen some examples of people who've claimed to be successful. Purdue has a test house in Indiana that they did. They used first they burned the paint off, set the house on fire. Then they used the wood shaver, which is not recommended. Then they sanded the surface. Then they slathered it with wood preservative, ethylene glycol. Then they painted it. Then they primed it, and then they painted it. They didn't do the back. But the unique thing about that case is there's no moisture. There was no vapor barrier in the house. Wood siding on the studs, and then the plaster, and no insulation. The Park Service, and I did go back and read the whole thing. You didn't send me the whole thing, but I got the whole thing. Says that I should be able to repaint my house every 8 or 9 years with a minimal amount of touch-up and prep without having to completely restrip the project. You know, I think when we did the house at 656 East High Street, we weren't under the H1 guidelines. You know, we looked at every clapboard. We preserved it if we could, and then a few years later, we're back replacing those with, you know, with wood. I don't know what the solution to the problem is. The Board of Architectural Review and the staff are supposed to help us with solutions to problems. The solution that they attached to my copy was excess interior moisture should be removed from the building, and I think Mr. Giannacchio said that, through installation of exhaust fans and vents. Well, I don't know exactly how I'm going to do that. I feel like that when you know, I worked hard for the H1 overlay in my area, my hope was that properties would be restored. We'd get some of the vinyl siding off of these properties. We would open up the soffit detail and the wood trim and so forth because it's so beautiful. But since we don't have an economically reasonable alternative to the vinyl siding, it's never coming off. So I think, I don't know whether it's here or in your guideline or I know you all have a committee that reviews your guidelines. Maybe that's where I should be speaking. But I think if we want to preserve our neighborhood, we need to find an alternative for this problem. Lastly, I would like to submit a letter of support from Phase 4. Bill Campbell, who used to be a member of this board, he has nothing to do with this project. He says, this letter expresses my opinion concerning the use of cement board siding in lieu of wood on historic properties. I feel strongly that the time has arrived to consider approving the use of cement board siding. There are several reasons for my coming to this conclusion. The cost and quality of wood siding. Wood costs 3 to 4 times the cost of cement siding. The use of new growth trees, sap versus heartwood, and slicing logs versus quarter sawn shortens the wood lifespan. Appearance. It is available in the size and finishes which closely match what is available in wood. Unlike materials such as vinyl, it closely resembles wood. Its use is environmentally friendly and saves natural resources. I strongly believe in historic preservation. I've spent my life in this field. However, consider myself a practical preservationist and feel the change is warranted in this case.
Thank you. Yeah.
I would also like to submit into evidence, as I can, a copy of the material that I would propose to use, and the staff has disapproved. And the only point I want to make about that is a lot of the times you see hardy plank with a wood grain trying to be into that, and I'm not proposing that. And I also submitted into the record, I suppose you have it, some examples of what this product looks like versus cedar versus redwood. Are there any questions for me?
Yeah. Well, let's see if there are. Mr. Hingley?
I don't think I have any questions. I'm very familiar with the problem you're having. I'm having the same problem with my own residents. I am concerned. Just a question. The paint that's peeling. You have a photograph of the side of your house. Did you notice that last season that it seemed to be in fairly good shape, but for some reason this spring and summer it deteriorated quickly?
No, I haven't noticed that. The only thing that I did notice, which I submitted in the picture, is that there are some clapboards there that I replaced when we did the addition on the back, which I think was 9 years ago or 10 years ago, something like that. I don't remember that specifically. And those seem to be, the paint on that is great. And there's even a couple up high that I didn't put in the pictures that seem to hold up well. So I don't know, but nothing in the near term is any different than.
I personally don't have a problem with the hardy plank. From an aesthetic standpoint, I think it looks very similar to the wood. Retains its shape better than the new wood that we're using, or that's available. That's reasonably priced. Even the redwood is very, very expensive. Becomes cost prohibitive on doing the entire side of a house or multiple sides of a house. But I think it's been the policy of the board over the last several years that I've been on the board that replacing natural siding, wood siding, with synthetic material has not been approved.
I understand that.
So
But I'm entitled to ask.
Yes, yes, you are.
Okay.
But I mean, that's been the policy of the board. And personally, for me, I've been trying to make sure that we get some equity from neighborhood to neighborhood to neighborhood to neighborhood, and that everybody gets the same shake. You mentioned that there was a committee that was looking into this, and I believe that's the case. And hopefully, before too long, that's going to be looked at and reviewed, and hopefully we'll be able to use hardy plank in instances.
Well, Bill Campbell said he spoke to that committee maybe a year ago. Does that make sense?
Actually, just 2 or 3 months ago, but that's
Considering the source, maybe it was, okay.
I mean, that's where we're coming from as a board, and I just trying to give everybody a fair shake. We've made other folks put the wood siding up.
Okay.
I don't know whether you could hold off till spring or maybe early summer. But that might be able to help
Probably won't
you
get
out.
it done till spring, but I mean, that's the,
Well, that might be something worth thinking about.
but, well, I just turned 64, and I've been redoing this house for 20-some years now, and most of the time it hadn't looked too good. I mean, we fix it up, we paint it, and then we come back and these problems come back. My mother told me not to buy this house, by the way. She said it would be a money pit, but Mother always said she spoke her mind and then left it alone. So anyway, any other questions for me?
Yes. Mr. Aller?
Oh, I sympathize with you totally. All of us live in historic properties and have similar stories. I just restored a house in Mercer County that's a wood frame house, the same condition you've got, and it's not going to hold the paint. Right now, according to the guidelines, which Mercer County is very similar to Lexington, is I can't do anything about it. But from my standpoint, I'm more interested on that particular house, keeping the historic fabric than going back and totally recladding it in hardy board. Now, we do allow, as a rule, on new additions to existing houses.
I'm aware of
to
that.
use the hardy board, but it's just we can't do anything.
Yeah. I used redwood on my addition. It's lovely.
Very. Yeah.
Mr. Wingfield?
I don't have any additional comments. I do understand your plight, and I think your arguments are good ones. But I'll also echo my colleagues' comments that at present the guidelines pretty much require us to deny your application.
But the guidelines that you set are set locally by the Planning Commission, is that correct? Or is it?
It's the Historic Preservation Commission adopts and approves the guidelines. And you are indeed correct that they are under review, and Mr. Campbell did come
Did
speak to
testify,
them.
okay.
Yes, he did. And I assure you that this particular issue is being looked at very, very closely. And I think Mr. Hanley's comments are good ones. Thank you.
Mr. Dickinson?
I don't think I have any additional comments, but except, we've all dealt with this issue, but I am a little mystified, and you and I talked the other day, by the complete failure of the paint on the side of the house, and yet the front of your house, which is the same siding, I assume, same type wood, has held up beautifully, and I'm really puzzled by that.
I don't know the answer to that.
And the house next door to you, which, unless it's just been recently painted, looks great, and it's the same
It
house.
was. You talking about the yellow house?
Yeah, was it just recently painted?
That's ours. We did it last year.
Oh, okay. Well, it's beautiful.
Well, that's the one that we did 11 years ago, and then redid all the siding and repainted last year. We didn't redo all the siding. We went back and patched in.
When you did the yellow house, was the paint as deteriorated as your paint?
It had
on
been
your
in a
house?
fire.
Okay.
It had been under vinyl for 20 years. As I said, we went through board by board and saved each one that we.
Okay.
But we would have been much smarter had we known, to have, taken it off, replaced it, back primed it or something, because that wood did not hold paint. And then a lot of it failed in other ways too, once it was exposed, uncovered from the vinyl by cupping and cracking, and mostly on the east side of the house. But thank you. It does look nice.
Well, and the observation I was trying to make was, I was just puzzled by the fact that, and the fact it may be that the side of your house sits in such heavy shadows from the trees and all, maybe that's the moisture contributor. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I think the vapor barrier is on the wrong side of the wall.
You may be right.
For an air-conditioned house and, the way we heat.
That's an interesting theory, and I hadn't thought about it.
And there's no solution for that.
Yeah.
So.
There's also not lead in paint anymore. I think that's
true. Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
It's a good thing, but not for the life of the paint.
No, that's right. Well, I noticed in the historic preservation, the national standards for the Secretary of Interior standards, they would have you put oil paint back on the surface as the best solution to the problem if it's never been painted with latex. So. Well, thank you. I didn't. I expected staff to disapprove. I appreciate your hearing my appeal, and I appreciate your comments.
We haven't done anything yet, okay?
I didn't say you hadn't turned it down. I didn't say that. I appreciated the chance to speak.
Right.
I expected the staff to turn it down, and I hoped you would give it some consideration.
Well, we would like to, and I think your arguments, like everyone has said, are arguments we've heard before, and we understand completely. We are, as Mr. Wingfield pointed out, I would say our guidelines are being reviewed by this committee that you mentioned, and I know that's one of the big ticket items on the agenda, and it may very well be that there will be some change in that. I'm not sure. We don't know what the committee's going to come back with, but it's being looked at very carefully.
Well, my big point, excuse me, I'm sorry.
But right now, like Mr. Hanley was pointing out, in view of the fact that it's been our policy based upon that guideline not to approve the replacement of wood siding on historic structures with synthetic materials, it's hard for us at this point in time to, in your case, allow you to do this when we've had to take the position of not approving that with other people. And so it's a dilemma for us right now, even though we understand what you've said, and you certainly have made some very, very good arguments about the wisdom of doing that. I think hardy plank's a great material, and I think the sample that you picked out is certainly a very good example of that product and how it could be used. But right now we are not able to, I guess, given the precedent that we've set before with other groups, to be able to take action to
I understand that if you did approve it would be a precedent.
It would be.
Yes, it would.
But I also want to say I greatly admire both those houses, and I think you deserve enormous commendation for what you've done with them. They're beautiful, and it's so nice that they're still there and so well maintained. And maybe in a few months when we hear back from the from this committee about the guidelines, there may be there could be a different position. I'm not sure about that. We could go ahead and disapprove your application this afternoon, and of course that would give you the right to appeal to the Planning Commission if you want to do that.
I don't think I want to do that.
Okay. Or if you wanted to,
but I'll think
withdraw your application, we could come back and look at it another time. I don't know. What would you suggest, Rochelle?
Well, I think that if there's not a change in the guidelines, the results of asking for the same thing are going to be the same. If, on the other hand, there's a change in the guidelines, that would certainly be a circumstance that would allow him to apply for this same thing again to be reviewed under the different guidelines. That would justify not holding him to that to that delay period, so I don't think there's a problem.
So you're suggesting that we should go on and disapprove it, and
I think either way is fine. I don't think he's going to be prohibited from coming back if there's a change in the basic circumstances that would relate to the review of this request.
Your interpretation of new evidence is change in guidelines?
I think that that would be sufficient to make the circumstances change. That's certainly, you know, I realize a change in the law isn't usually considered evidence because evidence is factual, but I think if the standard of review changes and what he is asking for would now be permitted under a guideline change, I wouldn't have any problem with this board finding that that is a changed circumstance, and this board could find that they would be willing to hear it again as a result.
Okay, thank you.
okay.
Sir, I'm sure you're aware, we're discussing the time period before you can reapply of 1 year for the same case, just for clarification.
I'll be 65.
And I'll be older, too.
Well,
Okay.
if we disapprove it, he has to wait. We'd be better off if he just withdrew.
But
What you think?
I think Rochelle's opinion was that if we do disprove it and there is a change, that year probably would not be a factor anymore.
And it's our prerogative, basically, to interpret that regulation as we see fit, and I think there's pretty much, I'm hearing a consensus that if there's a change in the guidelines, we're going to allow applications to come before us that we may have previously disapproved within that 1 year window.
So you're saying if they do change the guidelines, the
You can come
1 year
back.
window wouldn't apply, so I should
Right.
reapply?
Yeah. Otherwise, what we're trying to say, and I think we're killing this poor horse to death, is that we can just go ahead, disapprove the application. You're not going to be prejudiced from resubmitting if the guidelines change.
I understand.
Okay.
And you would have the right to appeal if you wanted to.
And I understand that, too.
Okay. So,
Thank you.
any more discussion? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make comments about this application? I don't think there are any comments. Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move for disapproval of the COA for 646 East High Street.
Second?
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Okay, fine. Thank you very much. All right. There are two other items on our agenda, which are postponements. 356 Merino Street, construct a storage shed. That item has been postponed. And 223, 229 Miller Street, construct a single-family house. That has actually been postponed also. We will have to have a motion and I guess specify a date to which we're postponing these items. Is that?
I think postponement would be to the next meeting, which is the 12th of December. Due to the holidays, there won't be a second meeting in November.
Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to postpone 356 Merino Street to the December 12, 2007 meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. The chair will entertain a motion to postpone 223, 229 Miller Street to the December 12, 2007 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Okay, that concludes the review of certificates of applications. This afternoon, we have a conceptual review in the South Hill, property 359 South Mill Street. Conceptual review is an opportunity for the board to meet informally with an applicant to discuss the scope and nature of a project. It's an opportunity for the applicant to get feedback from the board and for us to be able to indicate to the applicant what information we might require in our position about the work prior to the applicant making a formal application. And we highly recommend this process, and we're happy this afternoon to have an opportunity to have a conceptual review for 359 South Mill Street. So we will ask the the staff to make a presentation so we can see the project, and then we will have an informal discussion with the applicant after that and talk about the nature of the project. So, Amelia.
At this time, the applicant is asking for a conceptual review for 359 South Mill Street, and the new owners of this property are looking to expand the square footage in the rear of this property. Presently, what you're seeing is a lap siding, and I believe this is masonite that was done, and you can see the roof line of what this previous addition, which is actually brick, and then this was a porch that was enclosed with these 60s windows that were placed in there. The present plan is to put a second story on this that would be inset to allow fenestration on the north side of this, and also add landscaping and a garage. And here's the rear of the property now, and you can see this is a brick area, this is masonite, I believe, area that goes all the way back, and then another L addition. If we can see them. And here's the-
How
yes.
old is that addition?
The
It looks 1950s, but I can't
This
tell.
part is 1950. Sanborn maps show that these are earlier and not necessarily of the 1960 era. And I've included the Sanborn map for 1934,
Thank you.
1958 in there that shows that with that original configuration before this porch was enclosed.
Okay.
And you can see this is the side of this house, Jim, which shows you that you have brick here, and this is also brick, but it's
Yeah.
two different add-ons.
This looks strange, but
Mm-hmm. And if we can go to the plans. This is the present plan. And you can see the difference here in what was enclosed. And this is the proposed plan. And the proposal calls for the addition of a frame, second story placed atop here, and then a brick, second story brick here with a porch out to the back, and then a garage with some landscaping to connect the two. Guidelines have been included for your reference. As this is conceptual review, we have no findings at this time. However, some of the items to be considered include: is it appropriate to add a second floor onto an existing one-story L? Is it appropriate to demolish the existing addition and to construct another addition? Is the complexity of the proposed addition's form, shape, height, and scale and site utilization compatible with adjacent historic structures? Is the proposed addition of contemporary design compatible with adjacent and surrounding structures? Do the proportion, directional emphasis, and rhythm of the proposed addition reflect the predominant proportion, emphasis, and rhythm of the adjacent surrounding buildings? Are the openings compatible in size, scale, proportion to established patterns of openings in the adjacent surrounding buildings? Does the proposed addition have a similar ratio of openings to solids as adjacent surrounding buildings? Do the architectural details and articulation of proposed addition relate in scale, rhythm, and portion and texture to adjacent and surrounding historic buildings? Are the materials and scale to the buildings in which they are located incompatible with the materials in the adjacent surrounding building? Has the new construction been placed on its site compatible relationship to setbacks and placement of adjacent surrounding structures? Do the proportion, directional emphasis, and rhythm of proposed addition to the existing structure reflect the predominant portion, emphasis, and rhythm of the adjacent surrounding structures? Do the proposed addition to historic structures compromise the architectural significance of the adjacent surrounding structures as well as significance of the streetscape and district? Does the garage take up more green space? Does the proposed work consume an excessive amount of the project's remaining green space? Are the new landscape, land features, and alterations to existing land landscape and land features compatible with the surrounding historic properties and principal and accessory structures of the property. There's no recommendations at this time, and the applicant is present for further questions.
See, would the applicant like to come forward? Kind enough to give us your name and address.
My name's Cole Bennett. I live at 459 North Martin Luther King Boulevard. I work for Stewart Architecture.
Okay. Do you have any comments? I mean, we've seen the drawings, and I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to add as a word of explanation, or whether you want just us to dive in and give you some comments back.
I guess I feel like just a couple basic ideas that haven't quite been addressed yet are that South Mill is a pretty affluent neighborhood and supports a lot of renovation efforts, and this family that owns it and is going to live there, I guess I see them as a part of the neighborhood, typical part of the neighborhood, and that sort of allowing these additions, sympathetic additions to homes in the neighborhood is part of the improvement process of the neighborhood. It's going from a two-family rental property right now to a single family, and the investment that they want to make in that home is a logical one, I feel. You know, we will be adding a garage. It will reduce cars on the street in the sense of fewer people in that home, as well as fewer no parking on the street. Sort of intangibles, but conceptual things that may be relevant. So.
Okay. Thank you. Well, we appreciate your coming, and this is a less formalized process, and I will ask members of the board to make comments, and but you can also interact with us too in the process. So, Mr. Hanley, do you have any comments to make?
The staff, what they typically do on these conceptual reviews is, you can see here in the last page of the findings, give us some things to look at.
Right.
And when I first opened this up and was looking at it, I was like, oh my goodness, what are they doing? It's just, the mass just seemed so much larger than what's there now. And I started looking at the plan and everything, and I think perhaps maybe the square footage is not as much as the elevations may lead one to believe on paper.
Yeah.
At least for me, I think maybe in this sense, less is more, as far as, you know, the detailing and the brick. And I noticed on the rear, I guess it's the right elevation and the left elevation, there is kind of a mimicking of the existing structure. And I think from a historic sense, losing the essence of that existing structure probably would not be looked highly upon by the staff if this came up for official review. So I would make a suggestion, a couple things. One, maybe try to make that back, the back portion of the addition, maybe make it more simple. Maybe not try to mimic the gable ends that's on the existing house. Perhaps more transparency on the side also. I know you have quite a bit of glass up here on the top second floor, and I didn't know how much of that would be able to be done on the first floor.
Part of that is that we are only about 9 inches from the property line on the right elevation, so we really can't penetrate that wall.
Okay. There was a question about whether it was appropriate to put a two-car garage on the back of the property. I don't have a problem with that. This is an urban lot. There's very little green space in the urban area of downtown.
It is all
However,
gravel back there.
I'm sorry?
It's all gravel back there right now.
Okay. I would maybe think about treating some of the space putting some green space back in elsewhere. Maybe trying to minimize the footprint of the garage, maybe to its, reduce it to its minimal requirements for a two-car garage, and then in square footage, and then try to minimize the paving to get back to the garage. I noticed that there is a pretty wide driveway. There's a line of asphalt or concrete, whatever it is. It looks like asphalt that's coming down along the side of the house, and it looks like it goes all the way to the fence or property line. I think the maximum width that we typically get for a driveway like this is 9 feet.
Yeah, I think I drew it at 8. Right now, it is all gravel just from the property line to the house, so we would be reducing that. We are providing a turnaround since it's such a long driveway, so that adds to the paving area. There would be some green space planned on the side of the garage, and then a little bit sort of between that turnaround and the proposed porch on the back.
Okay. So you are looking at some other issues as far as green space, trying to add some back in.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Thinking of a buffer between the driveway and the house, keeping that strip wide enough to, support some, not just grass, but, a little bit of ground cover or lower bushes near the house.
Okay. I noticed there's a fence that goes all the way around the property. Is that existing?
It is.
Okay. So there wouldn't be any new fencing at all?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Those remind me of the mass is a big thing, I think, for me anyway. I'll let some of the other folks talk, but that's the biggest problem that I have with it right now.
Okay.
Mr. Ballard.
My basic first question is, I don't think I've ever tried to take a historic house and put a second floor on it, which is an interesting, I don't know guideline-wise whether that's acceptable. I just restored a house that had 3 additions to it, all of which were second floors to what were first floor, similar sort of things to gain space, obviously. Have you checked your ground coverage? Because we have some new guidelines now in terms of open space.
We are over in our proposal. So
you're going to have to go for a variance?
Yes, yes. We would only be allowed to add about 200 square feet to the house under the current guidelines. It would, it allows 2,600.
They're pretty stringent on those. You might go ahead and bounce it through there and see through planning.
Oh, okay. Application in the works.
I've had some problems with that. The other thing you might consider is, rather than a paved parking area, and if you want to see it, I've got it in my house at the corner of Pine and Mill, using the very fine gravel and the really nice steel edging, and do that, which would be a little more.
Is that allowed still? I've heard recently.
Well, building inspection doesn't like you doing it, and they've never come up with a reason. They just like pavement. But in terms of the drainage of the, and the other thing you can consider is using some, since it's just a driveway for the house and it's not going to get that kind of traffic on it, is a system that I've used, and I'll be glad to show it to you, that is a grid sand sod. And then, for at least part of this, you could look at, and it's actually drivable.
Like Grasscrete, they call it sometimes?
I'm sorry?
Grasscrete, they call it, that has holes in it that allows grass to grow up between.
Well, no, this is total sod on top, and it's about that thick. It's a heavy acrylic that takes traffic, and you drive right on top of the, I've had very good success with that. I'm having a real hard time with building the second floor on the existing brick portion of the building and just kind of, yakking that sucker up there and creating that big mass in the middle of what was originally, until they added the 60s addition, a very simple house with a brick L on it. I don't know. I'll yield to the others on that.
Okay. Mr. Wingfield?
I think one of the first questions that I would consider would be seeing if the staff would come out and look at the existing addition, the existing L, and give you at least some sort of determination of its significance. If in fact the existing addition has been compromised, the older addition has been compromised by the later additions, I think a whole different realm of design possibilities would open up to you that would allow this project to move forward in a much different manner, and I think in a manner that would be much easier to fit within the guidelines and still get the additional living space that your clients are after. I don't want to put staff on the spot tonight at all with regard to that question, but I think it's one that you should examine.
Of course, I don't know about reflecting this. I did it with not dealing with any of the story.
Right. I guess my my question would be is whether the 1960s edition had compromised the integrity of the original L, the original addition to the structure, and that's a question that I don't want you. But I would recommend to you that you'd have staff come out and address that question.
Right. Of course, it's our opinion that that rear addition is not complementary to the original structure, and that our addition would be much more sympathetic to that and would replace some of the mistakes that were made in the past. But we'd certainly be happy to.
I think that you should have that discussion as soon as you can, because as presented, I agree with Mr. Ballard and Mr. Hanley. I think that right now it's too massive for the original historic structure and the site. Typically, when we approve additions, rarely is the original cornice line violated, and I realize that's going to be extremely difficult if the original additions are there. You don't have a lot of, there's not much you can do. One thing that you could consider would be tying in above the, on the existing additions, beneath the cornice line on the rear of the original historic structure, stepping that back, with just almost like a little connector piece, and then going back up. And you'd have that reads more as, a separate mass from the
front mass would be
the front mass, and so you'd have your front mass, a little connecting piece, and then go back up to your new addition. I think Mr. Hanley was very correct, and I would reconsider the. And this might all be premature discussing this if, in fact, there's some other design opportunities that come before you. But I would, that said, again, I think that maybe the back part of the house should not echo the side gable situation that's on the front. With regard to the garage and the parking, I think that Mr. Ballard and Mr. Hanley's comments are right on the money. Gravel is not allowed as a paving service in Fayette County except in historic districts when the Board of Architecture Review approves it.
Okay.
And I hope that was a little helpful.
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Dickinson.
Well, I'm not the architect at all. I'll just have to give you a first impression that my reaction to the drawing, and it could be just that I don't understand scale particularly well. It's just too big. One of the purposes of the historic overlay is to, and I'm not suggesting your house is that at all, but is to prevent McMansions from being installed. I think you have a very difficult site to work with, and I think you have a very uncomplimentary L to deal with to begin with. And you may want to explore with the staff, and I don't know where the staff will come, but perhaps a removal of that addition and start over with some other more complementary L that might work with the original fabric of that building better. Now, I don't know whether the staff can do that or not. But it's an innovative solution. I'll give you that, but I just don't see it in terms of its mass being consistent with the guidelines at all. I think it's a very innovative and a very interesting proposal, but the overall effect, especially when you walk along the side of that building, it's just going to be too massive. Especially, I take it that's a fairly narrow lot to begin with, right?
Well, it is a narrow lot, and it's
It's what, 50 by 100?
125, I think.
125, okay.
Yeah. Maybe.
But I think your problem is that the existing addition is interesting.
Well,
it's so long, isn't it?
Well, the existing, footprint of the house, we're not really exceeding that. We're only adding about 30
That's why I
square
mean, it's
feet
just a very long
per
addition to
floor.
begin with for the overall look of the house.
Yeah. I guess some of the factors we were considering, too, were that the narrowness of the lot, the proximity of the houses near it, and the sort of the street approach and the street view that you would normally get. You would still appreciate mostly that front mass that was untouched of the original.
Yeah, and a lot of people have that impression that we only look at the front, and we don't. We look, as we're looking down. On your garage proposal, have you thought about a carport instead? Because you're wedging a lot of masonry into that very small lot.
Yeah.
That you may want to look at some kind of a carport structure to get, if you want to get one of the cars off the street.
Right.
But as it's been pointed out, you are in an urban area, and people park on the streets.
Yeah.
And I think Mill Street now is on restricted parking. So I have friends living on Mill Street, and I've had very good luck always finding parking.
Yeah, I have as well.
Okay.
Except when there are 2 or 3 dumpsters.
Yeah, well, yeah.
In one block.
It's a good first effort, but I don't think this one's going to fly. Is my humble opinion.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with everyone here. I think the proposal is very innovative, and I think given the dilemma that you have with this house being so very small and trying to make it respond to the lifestyle of people who have families, I think makes it extremely difficult, I think, to stay with the existing design. And you're not exceeding the ground coverage with this, with the exception of the porch, which you're adding on the back.
Right.
I like the fact that you have preserved the right elevation by actually insetting the addition on the second floor,
Have
so
to
that
get
so we still maintain that reading.
Yeah.
I guess I could maybe wonder if there should be some differentiation between the proposed addition that you're making on the back of the house. Maybe, I don't know whether, I guess using brick would be all right. I mean, another possibility would be to do the gable end again, maybe, although maybe it's done in wood, so that it's not reading the same as the original mass of the house. I'm not sure if that would work or not, or perhaps trying to create some kind of a joint so you would understand that the gable end was something new. But I personally think, when I go by there, it's actually very hard to even see the addition that's there because the lot is so very narrow.
Right.
And the addition that's on there right now I find incredibly awkward architecturally, and I think it's just been a series of additions which got added on, porches enclosed, et cetera. And so to me, it's not a very contributing kind of addition, with maybe the exception of the the, you know, the brick walled portion that we kind of see on the right elevation. So from my point of view, but I'm just one person apparently here tonight, I don't find it too massive at all, and I understand the dilemma you're facing. I might consider relooking at the porch. I mean, I guess they want something on the outside. It's interesting, when I look at the plan, it looks like the porch is much narrower than it appears to be on the elevation. Maybe I'm wrong about that. And, you know, I think the reality that you're involved in, I mean, the reality of the site, forgive me, is that it's a very small site, and I think even if you were to just simply add a garage and not do all of the other work that you're proposing, you're still, even with the addition of the garage, consuming a lot of space. And so I think the comments that were made about maybe how you could treat the driveway, perhaps you could minimize the size of the garage somewhat, although the depth is a given. And you know, if you made it smaller, I guess you'd be creating a little bit of space on the side, but I mean, it doesn't really count for very much. But I think, you know, I also would say that I agree with the comments, however, that were made about the new rear portion, the new gable-ended portion. I'd be really happier, I think, if perhaps the window treatments were more contemporary. I mean, it's facing the rear of the property. Why not add more glass? Why not make that more transparent? Maybe you can. Maybe those end gable walls are simply there on the sides, and there's something new that happens in between them, so that it's obviously not trying so hard to replicate the front. Yeah. But when I looked at it, I personally did not have the same issues with the proposal that some of the other people here or tonight. However, it's not going to fly only with my support. Okay. So I think you need to think about what was being said to you.
Yeah. Can I make a couple?
Yeah, sure.
I do not consider it to be too massive. It just kind of caught me off guard that you're building up over an existing historic piece. And with that said, if that's not a big problem, I have several suggestions. I like exactly what Clyde said, that you're setting it in on the side. If it were mine, I think I would come on the back and do the back addition in wood frame, leaving the historic brick all exposed, including on the back elevation, bringing and setting in somewhat that piece that's new, so that it reads as what the original L was. The new piece is all done in the clapboard siding like you're proposing it be done. I would pull the roof down on the center section so that it does not meet the ridges of the others. It's much lower, which I think would distinctly, you know, down to the point that it's got just enough slope, you know, to drain, so that it doesn't read as part of the historic mass at all. And I think that would take a lot of the massiveness out that my fellow board members are concerned about. And I personally have a problem with the proportions of your little porch on the back. I think it's too deep, meaning going out the rear. I think it would be much more successful if it were half as deep as it is, and I think proportionally it would look much nicer with the building. Living on Mill Street myself, you do not leave a car on the street unless you absolutely have to. They love to go through after ball games and break windows. So I would support the two-car garage. I would consider somehow creating the illusion of more green space, possibly using the gravel, and I think it's, you know, I got them to allow it, so I think it's allowable. It's not been that long. And making it a little more green between the house and the garage. But in this day and time downtown, I think Clyde will attest. I think you almost have to have a garage. So those are my comments. A couple of other comments. I would consider. I agree with Mr. Carpenter, Clyde's comments here about don't get hung up on the traditional windows on the new addition. I think if you could get, even using double hung, don't use the sash, the mutton, maybe just one light over one light or something, just to differentiate the fact that it's not historic fabric, it's new. And those are my comments.
Okay. Well, I think those are really good suggestions.
Staff has a couple of comments,
Yes.
if you don't mind. I think in our preliminary meeting that Mr. Bennett and I had, we did discuss that reducing the roof line in the middle below the cornice of the front mass was something we could look at, because he still could get head height in there, be appropriate, and that would work well. This is a really tough site with the new building code that's come into effect, and so this is one of these things that we're going to come up with as far as how can you do something within this new building code and also have a fire rating that would be appropriate, because those kinds of things cannot go and get variances. I mean, that's just pretty much how it is. But one of the things also maybe talked about, if a plan similar to this is to be used, that maybe the rear doesn't have such a presence as the front, so the front retains its original mass and scale, but in the rear maybe has a smaller but equal size, and I think there were some comments about the porch, and in plan and how this was talked about with the landscaping, it seems to flow well, because it's not really expanding past the actual building form itself, but also it sort of creates sort of an outdoor space without having outdoor room to be able to do that, and I think this plan does call for putting more landscaping in where there isn't now, so that's interesting. But I think the mass and scale comments are something that really need to be pursued to have this read a little bit more softer in the real, so your main mass still keeps its original scale and form and presence. So just a couple of comments.
Thank you. Anyone else like to add to this or make any additional comments? Do you have any questions or any points that you want us to address? Okay.
Appreciate the forum.
Okay. Well, we'd be happy to have you come back, too. I mean, if you want to come back and go through a similar process, you're welcome to do that. And certainly work with the staff on this. And if you think you would like to come back and talk with us informally again, we're happy to do that also. And but we wish you well and hope the comments were useful to you in terms of where you might go next. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, all right. Okay. All right. I guess there are no other staff comments, I guess. Is that it? Okay, all right. Okay, we have one other thing left on the agenda, and that is to approve minutes of our that we have in our packet. We have minutes from the October 24, 2007 meeting, the January 24, 2007, and the February 14, 2007 meeting. Are there any additions, deletions, changes that anyone would like to propose? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from those meetings.
So moved.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion to approve minutes from those three meetings signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Is there any other business?
We also we have a calendar that everybody's sort of given comments back to the staff about, but we actually have to, I guess, are we making a decision on that today, Kathy?
Did you get my email?
Yes, we did, and if you look at the copy that we have now, that's all been revised.
Oh, okay, so it was on a Wednesday instead. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone, we've been presented a calendar for our 2008 scheduled meetings. Is there any discussion about that? I think that was sent to us by email, and then apparently there's a new copy today available for us. Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the calendar for...
So moved.
Second.
Sorry. Okay. All right. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right. Is there any other business? Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. Okay, thank you.